So we are on to Unit 9, which is measurement. In this unit, you're going to be finding specifically the volume and the surface area, but we are going to do a quick recap on 2D shapes. So the perimeter area and circumference of 2D shapes, two-dimensional objects. You will be using a formula sheet, so if you haven't received one yet, please raise your hand and make sure you have one, because it's very important. You'll be referring to it on both sides of this. So just a recap on your formula sheet. Last year, you should have done perimeter, an area of a square, a rectangle, and then circumference, an area of a circle. Okay, so those are your formulas. Remember, the P right here means perimeter, the A means area, and the C means circumference. This unit, this year, we're going to learn the volume of a rectangular prism and the surface area of a rectangular prism, as well as the volume of a cylinder and the surface area of a cylinder. Okay, we won't really be dealing with the triangle and the trapezoid as much. Okay, so first we're going to go through 2D shapes as a recap. Alright, so perimeter, if you remember, is the distance around a 2D shape. So like a fence in a backyard would go around the yard. The area, though, is the size of the surface, so like in the center, so all the grass inside that fence, or if you're painting, maybe say a wall, the space or the surface that you have to paint. Whereas the circumference is just specifically talking about a circle. It's the distance around a circle. There's two important vocab words that you'll need to know here for these. One is diameter. The diameter is the distance all the way across the circle. So that's going to look like this, all the way across. Whereas the radius is just half of the diameter. So the radius would just be halfway to the center. Very, very important distinction that we know the difference between the diameter, which is all the way across, and the radius, which is halfway across. And if you look back at your formula sheet, there is little hints. So on that circle, you see it says R. That could remind you that the radius is just halfway and that diameter is full. Alright, so number 4, grab your formula sheet. It says, using your formula sheet, find the area and the circumference of a circle with a diameter of 6 kilometers. Now, if you look at your formula for area, it says area equals of a circle, okay, because we're looking at a circle. Always identify what shape you're looking at, so use the right formula. Area equals pi times r squared. Now, if we look at a problem, we don't have any r, we just have the diameter. So when they only give you the diameter, it's so important that you cut the diameter in half, because remember, the diameter is all the way across. We want to find the radius. R stands for radius, which would just be halfway across. So what do? Well, diameter equals 6, so we're just going to cut 6 in half. So 6 divided by 2, our radius would be 3. Okay, so we're going to use 3, not 6, because the formula calls specifically for the radius, not the diameter. Now, going back to our formula, we have A equals pi times radius squared. So we're going to plug in that 3 in parentheses, just like we do when we substitute values in for variables, and squared. Now, if you look at this here, A equals pi times 3 squared, you have to still follow order of operations. So we can't do pi times 3 and then whatever that answer is squared. We have to make sure that we're doing our exponents first. So 3 squared would give me 9, and we're going to do 9 times pi. Do not use the pi button on your calculator. We're actually going to use 3.14. So in your calculator, you're going to type 3.14 times 9. All right, and you should get an area of 28.26 kilometers squared. Area is squared. Now, if we look at the circumference, because we also have to find the circumference. Circumference equals 2 times pi r. Okay, so we're still using that r. So we have 2 times pi, and we're going to plug in our radius, which is 3. Now, this one is all multiplication, all right? So you can go from left to right. You can do 2 times 3 first, because remember, the commutative property of multiplication says it doesn't matter what order I multiply the numbers in. You're still going to get the same product. So if you want to do 2 times 3 first, that's fine. So we have 6 pi, and then in your calculator, you would type 6 times 3.14. Now, once you put that in your calculator, you should get 18.84, and this one is just kilometers. So your circumference and your area. If you need to pause the video, you may. If you want to keep going, or you want to try something on your own, you can. We will do 5 and 6 together, and you'll do 7 through 10 on your own. So number 5 says, what is the area of a rectangular good to know that we're talking about a rectangle. Movie theater screen that has a height of 32 feet and a width of 64 feet. So we have height of 32 feet and a width of 64 feet. All right, so if we look at our formula sheet, our formula for the area of a rectangle is length times width. All right, now it doesn't matter what you put in for the length and what you put in for the width, because you're going to multiply the numbers. So 32 times 64 would give me the same product as 64 times 32. So we're going to say 32 times 64, okay? And when I multiply that out, I'm going to find that my area is 2,048 feet cubed. All right, moving right along. We are going to this time find the perimeter of a rectangular ink pad that is 5 centimeters tall and 8 centimeters wide. So again, we have that rectangle, but this time we're looking for the perimeter. So perimeter formula of a rectangle. Look at your formula sheet. Find the perimeter formula for a rectangle. Okay, so perimeter formula is perimeter equals 2 times L. Make sure that's not a 21, it's an L. Make a little cursive one if you want, plus 2 times W, okay? Again, it doesn't matter where you put the 5 and the 8 as long as they're going somewhere. Now, it does say wide, so we could put that in for our W. So 2 times 5 plus 2 times 8, just taking straight from the problem. Now, my perimeter equals, we're going to multiply first. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 2 times 8 is 16. So, my perimeter is 26 centimeters. Okay. I would like you to try 7, 8, 9, and 10 on your own. 7, 8, and 9 you're going to get straight from the formula sheet. Number 10 says if the area of a rectangle is 117 feet and the length is 13 feet, find the width. So you know the area, so you can plug in area and you know that the length is 13. And the width is W, okay? So I'm going to leave it up to you to try to figure out how you solve for the width. You can probably figure it out. All right, once you have answered 7, 8, 9, and 10, please raise your hand and get them checked before you move on to the back. Awesome job. All right, now that we had a recap of 2D shapes, if you flip over to the volume preview, we're going to talk about 3D shapes. So in this picture right here, you see that there is a 3D glass, okay? That is a cylinder right there. We're going to be talking about cylinders and rectangular prisms and what volume means to those two shapes. So if you see in the picture, there is a cylinder being filled with water. So volume talks about how much water or how much of some liquid or some solids, how much something can hold. That's what volume talks about. So keywords like fill and hold, you're really going to want to think, okay, that's the volume. So volume is a measure of the amount a container holds. The figure is 3D and its units are cubed. So every time you write the units, whether it's inches, miles, centimeters, kilometers, whatever it is, it has to be cubed. So instead of like the squared for area, it's going to be cm, centimeters cubed. Volume fills the figure, just like the water was filling the cup. It's going to fill something. So kind of some examples that we would maybe see in a word problem when we have to figure out that it's asking for volume are like how much soda is in a can, or how much soda fills a can in a can, or like soup in a can, how much water a pool can hold. And you have to write 1 or 2, but pool can hold, how much sand in a sandbox, maybe like cereal in a cereal box, a toy chest. Really, the list can go on and on. Anything you can think of that's going to fill an object. All right, so first we're going to talk about the volume of a rectangular prism. So as you see here, we have the 3D rectangular prism, and you see that the formula is volume equals length times width times height. Since we're multiplying all of these things together, again, please don't get too hung up on which one's the length, which one's the height, which one's the width, because we are going to just multiply them together. You're going to get the same cross product no matter what. So if we look at the first one, it says 6 meters, 3 centimeters, or 6 centimeters, 3 centimeters, and 4 centimeters. So I'd say that 4 looks like my height, 3 looks like my width, and 6 looks like my length. Okay, so I have length equals, oops, not length equals. Let's erase that. I have volume, there we go, equals length times width times height. So I'm just going to take those three numbers and multiply them. So 6 times 3 times h. If I multiply them all, I should get 72 centimeters cubed. So that's my volume of this rectangular prism. And again, make sure, very important, that you have centimeters cubed, not just centimeters, because we're talking about volume. It's a 3D object. Okay, looking at the next one, number 4, so you're going down. There's a lot of numbers here, okay? Just make sure we identify which ones we're actually using. So 3 right here is a repeat up here. So we only need to use 3 once. Let's say that 3 is my width. 6, which is a repeat over here, is my height. And then we have 11, we'll say that's the length, okay? So again, volume equals length times width times height. So we're going to take 11 times 3 times 6. And if I multiply those out, you should go ahead and multiply them out on your own. You should get 198 centimeters cubed. All right. So what I want you to do is try number 5 and 6 on your own, solving for volume. Once you finish, please just raise your hand and get them checked, and then you can move on to cylinders. All right, so now we're going to go on to volume of a cylinder. Okay, so a cylinder would be like a can of soup, or just any type of can, or maybe like a paper towel roll, toilet paper roll, something cylinder. Something that's a cylinder, 3D. So you notice that it has a circle at the top. So that's why we're looking back at the circumference and the area, and we're talking about diameter and radius. Because there is that circle, which tells you the area of the circular base, so that's our circular base, by the height. Okay, so we're multiplying the area of the base of that cylinder by the height. Okay, so please label height on the side of the cylinder, and then I do also want you to label that your radius is halfway across. Okay, like that. Make sure that when you are calculating that, and when you're reading a word problem, or even just looking at a picture of a cylinder, that you are using the radius, not the diameter. So number 7 says radius is half of the length of the diameter. So if they give you the diameter, we're just going to cut it in half. So let's go ahead and try it. If you look at the very first one, it says, or it doesn't say anything, it just shows you that there's a cylinder with 6 as our radius, so we don't have to do anything, we don't have to cut it in half. If it was all the way across, then we would have to cut it in half, but it's not. And then we have 10 as our height. Notice that this one is actually turned, but that this is the radius because it's going halfway across the circle part. So our formula is volume equals pi times radius squared times the height. Okay, so same rules apply. We're going to plug all of our numbers in parentheses. So our radius is 6 squared times the height, which is 10. Okay, again, please square that 6 first. So 6 squared is 36 times 10. Then we can keep going. We have pi times 360, and then last step, type that into your calculator. 3.14 times 360. It's going to give you 1130.4 mi cubed again. Okay, so that's going to be our final answer. Okay, and that bottom one there, number 9. This time, notice something very particular about that cylinder, about the circle at the top, that they give you the distance all the way across. So they're telling you that the diameter is 10 and that the height is 12. But we want to know what the radius is, because that's what the formula calls for. So we're going to take 10, we're going to divide it by 2, which will give us 5, and our radius is halfway across. Our radius is going to be 5. So go ahead and write the formula down again. Pi r squared times the height. So we have pi times 5 squared times the height, which we said was 12. Okay? pi times 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25 times 12. You can type all of that in your calculator, but it's honestly a little safer not to, and to just keep going step by step. So 300, pi times 300. Now that's going to give me 942 centimeters cubed, and that's my volume. Okay, so my final answer would be 942 centimeters cubed. If you use the diameter instead of the radius, you would have a much higher number, and that would not be accurate, the accurate volume of that can or whatever the cylinder might be. So you are going to do number 10 and 11, 10 through 12. Get it checked, and make sure that 5 and 6 have been checked, if they haven't already. Once everything's been checked, you can put this in your binder and make sure you grab the reflection. There are some volume questions on the front, and then there are some spiral review questions on the back. I look forward to seeing you guys on Monday. Awesome job. Keep up the good work.